This is ContactTalkRadio.com. Consciousness in action. And you are taking action into your consciousness by tuning into Contact Talk Radio.
And on TuneIn.com, Ping.fm, and UpSnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio. Welcome to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. Joan and Janet are subtle energy empaths who navigate consciousness. Their passion is to support you in your evolution. As consciousness, we are all one. One mind, one heart, free of all limitations. Experience this reality with us and discover how it can make a difference in your daily living. Join us in a state of grace as we explore, with warmth and humor, this thing we call life. Now, here are Joan Newcomb and Janet Barrett.
Welcome to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. We're your co-host, Joan Newcomb, coming to you from Tacoma, Washington, and my partner, Janet Barrett's coming to you from Portland, Oregon.
Hello, everyone. It's so nice to be with you.
We're having a lovely day in the Northwest neighborhood.
Yeah, it's 86 here today. It's wonderful.
Oh, yeah, and we have a balmy 72 degrees. Sort of like deep winter in La Jolla. Right.
Yeah, it'll all work out.
Well, today we are talking about consciousness and death. Energetically, we're going through a collective death of ego identity. And who and what we thought we were is changing. And we're feeling this in different ways. We're feeling this loss of being, some people are finding it exhilarating. Some people are finding it disorienting. And then some are finding it very painful. So stay tuned, because we're going to talk about how is consciousness to move through this transition and beyond it.
And it's really happening, people. Yeah, we're just noticing there's no going back. Whatever you thought was isn't going to be anymore. So, and if you want to know more about us or connect with us beyond the show, join us at our website, www.consciousconversationswithjoanandjanet.com. And there you're going to find out information about all our podcasts, all of these great radio shows that are collected there, both our blogs, Joan and I both write, and our meetups. Joan there in Puget Sound area, me here in the Portland, Oregon area, and about our sessions. We both work with clients. So you can find out about our Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube links on the site, so your social media needs are met. And what else do they find there, Joan? Oh, about our groups and
your groups,
what we're all doing, huh? Yeah.
Yes. Well, so your groups are ongoing, aren't they?
Yes, each week. I think that really helps build a state awareness for people. And, people come and go.
Join at any time.
At any time, yeah.
It's not like an enrollment period or whatever.
No. And I am offering now using the Zoom video conferencing ability on Thursdays. Groups for those of you that are remote to my location here and can't come in physical person. You can join us wherever you're from here on Thursday mornings at 10 a.m. Pacific and Thursday evenings at 6 p.m. Pacific. So I have two different groups, and you can find out all about those at the website, consciousconversationswithjoanandjanet.com, or you can email me directly at janetb@janetandbeyond.com, and I'll get you the registration packet and all the information about what the groups are. So they're great stuff. And then I do the weekly meetups here, and because I think so much is happening, Joe.
Yes.
Right? I mean, every day there's something. And so by the time 7 days goes by and you sit down and you look at each other and go,
right.
Whoa, okay. And it's important, that connection, and to know things are moving okay.
I totally agree with you. My meetups are not as regular as yours because I do them all around the Puget Sound.
Yeah, really.
I try to hit a city once a month. My Tacoma regular meetup, my Conscious Conversations meetup in Tacoma, is this Saturday from 3 to 5 at the Wheelock Library in Proctor. That's the most popular place. It's where I started them back in 2015. So that is a really great location, and it's a really great group that comes to that. That's from 3 to 5 p.m. this Saturday. And you can find out on our website, consciousconversationswithjoanandjanet.com, how to sign up or RSVP for that. And then I'm going to be in Lakewood on the Cinco de Mayo, the 5th of May. That's actually going from 3:15 to 5 o'clock, I think it is. It starts a little later because it takes me longer to get down to Lakewood. And then I'll be in University Place on the 20th. So all of this whole month, this moment, they're all conscious conversations. They're all at the local libraries. So they're all free. And it's a great way to come and get started and carry on the conversation. If you learned about it through here, carry on the conversation. I have not scheduled my monthly webinar yet, and I will stay tuned for that.
Mm-hmm. I think, we're all at different places. That's one thing we notice about life, is that we're not all the same and in our levels of awareness. And that's where people are all the same, but the levels of awareness are different. And so that's the way it's supposed to be. So it's how we embrace wherever we find ourselves. And you and I both focus on making that a comfortable place for people to engage what they're noticing and give it a forum and a conversation. And then where you go with that, you take that as far as you want. And that's what's important, because things are different. This is a very unique time that we've managed to create, and that's being made available. And some of us are willing, some of us aren't, and some of us are just reveling in where we find ourselves. So we want to share that with people.
Yes, and that's a wonderful segue into what is going on in the world today and how we're having all these different reactions to it.
Yeah.
But there definitely is our identity, what we identify with, who we feel like we are, including both internally and externally, our sense of identity or who we are, what we identify with, what's familiar with us. All of those things are in the process of disintegrating as the greater light of consciousness, which is really the essence of who we are, is coming into form. And for some of us, we're exhilarated by it. It's really exciting. We embrace the change, but a lot of us, it's like, well, we were comfortable in our discomfort before. We were comfortable in the routine, so we just finally got it, and suddenly it's falling apart again. And so it can feel very disorienting. And for some people, they're hitting up against this sort of breakthrough experience, and the pain feels so intense they can't imagine anything beyond this. So there's been a couple people that I'm thinking of specifically who have felt suicidal with this. They just cannot imagine a reality beyond this. And I've had times of being suicidally depressed in the past. And
yourself, right? Yeah.
Yes,
right.
And when I was a teenager, I took a massive overdose and I was in a coma for 3 days. But then as an adult, when I left my first marriage and I had 2 young kids, it was so brutally painful. I just felt like jumping off a ferry. And it was really a bad time to take my kids to go see the Titanic movie.
That's cosmic humor.
Yeah. Now it's funny, but, so I definitely understand when everything is in the process of falling apart, and we cannot see beyond what our current reality is, and we cannot imagine it ever getting better, or that it's going to take so long to get better. We cannot stand being in it right now for a moment longer. And that is the egoic personality part of ourselves that is feeling that. That's our physical bodies can't imagine beyond this present moment. We're only familiar with what our life has been up to this moment. And when you shift your identity to being consciousness, it's such a relief, and it's a bigger picture of what's going on. So suddenly, you're not stuck in this traffic jam or this fog bank. You can actually see what's up ahead and realize that the road trip is entirely worth it, or the detour or whatever you're going through is entirely worth it.
And it is challenging all of us. Most of us come to our gifts through trauma, and I'm not saying that that's normal for everyone. Most of the people, and I've worked with lots of different people and had great I appreciate where people come from. And I know that a lot of us, and even myself, so I can speak that as my truth, that it was traumatic, my life was. And even though I've done my work and I continue to do my work and experience myself, as this unfolds, this unity that's happening between consciousness and the human part of me, and that merging and integration that becomes more effortless through this, there's still those places where all that has been holding somewhere. And whether it's been holding in my body or in my field or holding someplace where I'm not noticing it, in this tremendous release, the merging that's happening, this stuff is coming up. So people that have done their work and have thought that that's a little sensitive, downgraded it to that here it is. And so for all of us that are feeling this is no judgment about what you have been or what you have done or what you're going to be, because this is the shakedown cruise, right? And use the opportunity as it presents itself. So,
yes. So hold tight, because we have a lot more to cover about this.
Yeah.
But we have to stop for a commercial break, so stay tuned. We'll be talking more about consciousness and death when we come right back.
Is your soul calling you to do something more meaningful with your life? Do you feel crazy for wanting to quit your secure job? Perhaps you are waiting until you retire to do what you love. Maybe you are too daunted to follow your dream. If any of these match your life, then Joan Newcomb's Purpose and Passion Coaching Program is just for you. In just 12 weeks, you will discover who you essentially are and why you are here. Learn to live as your greater self and navigate with conscious mastery. Go to joan-newcomb.com. That's joan-newcomb.com for all of her coaching programs. Would you like a fresh approach to the challenges you are dealing with? Take a journey into your enlightenment with Janet Barrett. Janet is a subtle energies empath, accessing the field of potential with warmth, humor, and support. She will help you to hear what your inner voice is saying. She will share with you how to appreciate who you are now and offer you new ways to understand and transform your issues. Reach her at www.janetandbeyond.com. That's janetandbeyond.com. Again, janetandbeyond.com. Transformation is possible. You can enjoy new outcomes in your current experiences. They can happen in the blink of an eye.
You are listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. To reach our program, please send questions and comments to consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. That's consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. Now, back to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet.
Welcome back. You're listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. I'm your host, Joan, along here with Janet, and we are talking about consciousness and death.
Yeah, that's one way to put it, isn't it? I do want to remind all the listeners that are listening actively, right, whether you're live or on podcast, is just to take a moment, notice your awareness that all is well and that you are in a good place to be. Because that's one thing that's so apparent in group, Joan, in those group dynamics, is being able to feel how on all this turbulence that we're okay, that there is a rightness happening, that everything is perfect, and that you can feel that across the field, because there's lots of communities where people are getting this. And so as we go through it, that's this place you are coming out of. is that things are all right. And so just own that, everyone, because our intention is not to challenge people or trigger people. It is to share that we're all one and that there is a place and space as you recognizing yourself as consciousness that we're okay and you're okay.
Well, what I notice with that is that when you stop and you are in the present moment, you can access this sense of that all is very, very well. And to me, that's me, the little me being aligned with the greater me of consciousness. And I was sitting with a group last night and I was reflecting on how, my life isn't perfect, but it feels very prosperous. It feels abundant, and all my relationships are really blossoming, even though some of them are having some really strong difficulties. So there was this sense of all is very, very well, even in painful, challenging difficulties.
And that's really the human of you, right? That's registering it as making those decisions, those judgments and how things are organized. Because it's consciousness, we know it's okay. So it is all, and you realize that, okay, this is how we help ourselves, right? This is the ultimate help of ourselves. It's just about being able to find that place within ourselves. And I totally get that it is challenging when you're in the moment of an experience to grapple with thinking something different, finding this place. So that's why it is important to be in that space, bring that awareness of yourself as consciousness through your day, so that when you go to those places, that it's much easier to go snap out of it. You'll go in your process and you'll do your stuff, and also it's different. It's always different.
What I find is the other thing, being an empath, is that I can tune into people having these difficulties, and it can either sink me lower, so suddenly I'm down in the cesspool with them, or I can rise up to it's a higher level of being detached from the doom and the drama of it. And it's interesting because the other thing that's happening with this greater increase in consciousness is that we are each individually experiencing this expansion within us, and we are feeling a connection, a more acute connection with everyone around the world. So as I rise up, I can feel that essence connection with everyone without the need to be down there in the muck. And actually, or if I'm in the muck, I find it a very creative experience.
Well, see, that's it. Because that's what is different. Because you are in your muck and you still have that awareness going, I'm in my muck. And when you have the awareness that you're in your muck, that's consciousness as you operating, going, oh, okay, let's be in the muck. And we're not judging the muck because consciousness doesn't judge. It allows you to use it, abuse it, be with it, eat it, whatever it is. And that's what's different about this, is that you have more to work with. And it's so easy to get distracted, or we're all very firm that things are happening intensely, left and right. You can't even track it. And for instance, the last few days, that's what I've been feeling in just dealing with stuff around my life and what's going on. And it's like you're just trying to keep up, right? And then you go, well, at some point, this will reveal itself. To what this is. But right now I'm in the middle of it. And then you go, okay. And I think that's because we're all agreeing that there's stuff flying and you can't even, keep up with it. And so then that's what manifests in our immediate world, right? And it's like, it's a good way to get out of our habituated responses because you're being forced to respond. and sometimes that is a reaction.
I would say the habituated response is a reaction, and then the responding is coming from the newer space of consciousness.
Yeah, you get a new why in the road.
But it is coming so fast and so fast and furious, and it's you barely have a chance to get your equilibrium, and then the dial is turned up, the ante is upped. So it does. I would say yes. There's the feeling of being forced to respond differently, but when you align yourself as consciousness and respond as consciousness, it becomes really effortless. You can do it with skill and ease and grace without finding it overwhelming, without finding it difficult. It becomes enjoyable. I was just thinking of this analogy of doing it as human, and it's kind of like, well, oh gosh, why would you hike from here to there when you could drive? Because, driving gets there fast and all, you don't get mud on your boots and all. And like, well, because then you miss the smell of the pine cones or the view of the eagle overhead, and you miss all these things if you're not hiking. And that's the experience of being in your body and in the human experience of it. And that's why people, enjoy rolling around in the muck, because it's a human experience. And that's really what we're also doing as consciousness. We're here in body to have these human experiences. The challenge is to respond as consciousness rather than our body, because it's our bodies that are also flopping around saying, this is painful, this is uncomfortable.
Help me.
Right.
Well, and this is, this physical realm is about contrast, right? And so it's how you...
Contrast, right.
Yeah, it's all about contrast. And you just see the different way it plays out. And, in the hurly-burliness of the last few days and realizing, okay, I needed something to happen and the timing was off, and in order to make something happen, something else has to happen, something else has to happen, something else has to happen. And I went, okay, that's really ridiculous. What if I just allowed this to be different and get out of my track of it and just say, let's do this Saturday. It's okay if I don't have this till Saturday. Of course I want it then, but it's okay if I wait till Saturday, because then all these constructs that I'm putting everyone through don't have to happen. And that was just... it totally changed the dynamic. And the next thing, I've got a phone call from my husband saying, okay, let's get it. And my husband had no way to get there. So he made it when I said, we can wait till Saturday. And he responded to that. He's like, oh, and it opened up for him to go where I needed him to be. And, so that's so fun. It is really fun. Life is fun. I mean, if you get out of your miserable part about it. And I honor the miserable, but I realize that that's just the little me that's in that state.
Yeah, I was thinking, your husband, although he's very insightful and everything like that, he doesn't work in the intuitive realm like you do, which means it is harder for him to change on a dime. Yeah. And, he kind of prefers for you to do all their swirling about and the creative stuff, and then just let him know when he needs to be there and give him time to get there. So it was funny how it, for that situation you're talking about, how it ultimately worked out in his favor, because it gives him time to adjust. Yes.
And see, that's appreciating how we operate differently, how all of us operate differently, and being congruent and in alignment with not having to butt heads or be in resistance, which is on keeping the contrast going, but in going, okay, there are different ways to navigate this. And we will share reality, but how we come to that and what that interior voice about is very different. And we appreciate that, where at times it can also strain, right? So, it's, Well,
the other thing I'm thinking is that I would say most everybody listening to this is on the leading edge or right up there. They're excited about leading edge things. You guys are excited about leading edge things.
Right.
And pretty much that means I would guess that maybe 90% of the people in your reality are the opposite. It just seems that are not, operating in this reality or mindset or awareness. And so life is just happening to them and things can be pretty miserable and they're in a powerless situation. And the thing it took me a long time to realize is that no, everybody doesn't have to have the same awareness I do. And everyone doesn't have to keep up with the changes either. So the thing I learned with my current husband, who's a Tibetan Buddhist, which I discovered is like the Catholicism of Buddhism. And he has a very rigorous practice that is a couple of thousand years old, requires memorizing Sanskrit and things. And for him, that is his core. That's his core reality. And it doesn't seem to carry on into his daily life working for the state.
Or his genetics.
Or his genetics. He's half Swedish. And, but that's his core. And he has now started talking about, I am noticing a transition. I am feeling a shift. It seems like reality is recoding. And it's like you use that language. And there's this sense that there's something is changing and he's tuning into the subtle realms in a completely different way. And it's like, well, how does his practice work now when he's sort of on the 5D level with it?
Right. So you could be helpful in appreciating that he's in that space, right?
Yeah, and I don't have to jump in there and drag him into, master's degree in quantum physics kind of thing.
Yeah, no. Well, some of us serve as point people. When you're on, and I mean that because some of us serve also maybe or as the centering point for a group, right? My husband serves in one way, that way.
Yes.
I serve in a different way, that point person. So, and like you, we bring others along, right? And it's not necessary for them to have a sense that they have to do it because they're in our field. They've created us in their field. And, it's not about leaders and followers. It's about sharing different states of awareness, different, it's just, we're all part of the spectrum, right? And so it's maybe just right that someone that's in your sphere doesn't get it the way you get it, but they're still there. And how that's okay. It's not for them to get it the way you get it. And how that's okay. I mean, last night in group, we just really went back and visited about being angry. And we're all nice people. And what do you do with anger? And that's what came out of all this that people are going through. And it was okay to be angry and to give yourself the allowance that yourself as consciousness that you can get angry and it's still okay. And we really had to bring that state into awareness for people to shift into so that there's no judgment in how something is being experienced. And how do you create that? I mean, that's powerful stuff.
Yeah. So a couple different things you brought up and the second part first, which is how I see it is that our bodies are the ones having those strong emotional reactions. So as consciousness, I'm constantly bemused. I'm not angry as consciousness. I created all this. Why would I be angry as consciousness? But my body can be pissed off and I've also come to realize that my body it's my vehicle for this lifetime, but it's more like a horse. And, it's 59 now and it's like, I'm pretty darn tired being dragged along these trails. So you learn how to coax your body with it, but there's an acceptance of the emotions that your body is going through. Right. And then the other thing that I can't remember now exactly what you said, but I suddenly got this vision of this awareness that we are all going through this transformation, regardless of whether we're aware of it or not, and at whatever level of consciousness we're experiencing it, the transformation is happening, and every experience is valid. Even as, out to lunch as some relatives might be. There's this incredible, miraculous increase in consciousness is happening everywhere. And we won't necessarily recognize it in other people if they seem to be still, with the Confederate flag out front or whatever they are. But it is happening, and they are having a reaction to it. So, and as consciousness, it's just all good. It's all good.
Well, and I think that's part of the malleable nature of reality, is to be able to observe that and say, oh, okay, that's the way this is. That is only the way it is up to this moment. Because when you do this work, you appreciate the human who's in his experience and yourself as that human in that experience. And you go, and what if I'd like to do something different? And a lot of people don't appreciate that because they're not trained in consciousness work like we are and what we're all focusing on. And it's about, and that's the challenge I have a lot of times with intuitive work and how this old metaphysical framework has been, is that you can see something, you can predict something, you can observe something, and then that's it. And it gets locked down. And when you do this work as consciousness, and if you're an intuitive who does this work, you really got a jump there, because you appreciate that that's just that moment in reality, the way that's set, and that can be different. And as consciousness, if you engage it from that place, in that state of where there's no time, space, then those constructs that humanity, the physical realm sets up, that's not the final thing. And so when you give it up and go, oh, okay, and what if that could be different? And then something different happens, because you're not tied into that it has to be that just because you observe it as that.
I got this wonderful image as you were talking. It's a little bit like trying to solidify clouds.
Good luck with that, right?
Yeah, because actually, from the greater perspective of consciousness, it's like morphic fields are really clouds.
Uh-huh.
And we get our ideas, our concepts, our beliefs are actually really morphic fields as well. And there is a malleability to them, and things are in a constant state of change. When you operate as consciousness, that doesn't make you uncomfortable, it makes you exhilarated.
And that's one thing that's flashing when you say that if we go back to realizing that what we experience is just what we experience, and that we can often, and I won't say it that way. What I have been noticing for people around me, that suicide is a metaphor. It's where you give in, or for some reason you feel overwhelmed or whatever. And it's really, doesn't have to be a body thing. It could be just a giving in of the pattern, just a releasing. That's the way. And that death happens. It doesn't have to be a physical death. It can be a metaphorical death. And I think we have gotten that mixed up at times. The things that we're feeling all this intense pressure about something, and we feel it in a physical way, but it's not coming from a physical, and it's not about the body. It's about the body of information, and that wants to be different. And how in the past we might not have viewed it that way, but now we can.
Yeah. So the aspect that is dying is not us. It is
right.
It is an aspect of our identity, and
right.
and what is beyond that is the essence of who we are. So you think of people who hit these points of like, they're facing bankruptcy, and so they, they shoot their whole family. Well, that's a little extreme. And that, that you can then step back, and on a spiritual level, you look at how groups come in and groups go out. And as consciousness, there's no death. So even if someone does commit suicide, there's still consciousness. Yeah. There's not all that purgatory or any of that. That's all a story here and now about that.
Right.
And the other thing is to when you're operating as consciousness and your body is like, I cannot live on another day with that. You can respond from a bigger perspective, from a compassionate perspective as consciousness. I was thinking how both Eckhart Tolle and Byron Katie were both, suicidally depressed before they hit their huge breakthrough. Eckhart Tolle was like, I cannot live with myself any longer. And then suddenly he's like, well, who's the I who cannot live with myself? And that was his, everything.
That started the conversation. Yeah.
So if you're hitting that kind of depth of despair, just realize you're on the turning point of an amazing breakthrough. The sunlight is just outside the door.
Well, and it can be challenging in our empathic reality, okay, to feel this in those around us and then interpret that as us and feel it all as us, and it's not. And you have to come back to the awareness of, whoa, all right, 15% of this is me and 85% of it is that. And if I can separate that, then I can handle my part of it. And what I do is I bless, grace that other 85% and send it back to them. And the dynamics have changed. And it's reorganized itself already. And because like to like, opposites attract. I mean, we have all these dynamics that are in play, and we just have to remember how to navigate when we can. And consciousness allows that navigation in place. It'll pick out, okay, let's change the reference on this. Where I might be going, there's no reference to change here. And you go, oh, but there is. And if you know that you can't get to that in that moment, then you back off and you get yourself where you can be still and you allow it to shift for you. So it's about being open to what is there, and in that opening, noticing how you're relating, reacting, responding, and playing it different.
Yes, and just, the way we make it sound so easy, because it is. It sometimes can just be a matter of just taking three deep breaths resets you. I want to take a moment right now is to let folks know that if you tuned in late, you're listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. And if you like us and you want to know more, we have a website, consciousconversationswithjoanandjanet.com. And you can find all our old podcasts there. You can also read our blogs that we write about this stuff, and you can find out about our meetups that we have around the Puget Sound and in Portland. And Janet has sessions and I have sessions. And you can find links to all our social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. I also post my YouTube videos once a week there, and all those links are on the site. And then, Janet, you have a couple of groups that are happening right now that people can join from anywhere. Is that right?
Yeah, wherever you'd like to be. If you want to be live interactive with me and other people that want to be live and interactive and experience consciousness is real within themselves as a malleable state to play with, because it's all about potential. I have those on Thursday morning, 10 a.m. Pacific, and 6 p.m. Thursday, 6 p.m. Pacific. And we do it over Zoom. And you can feel it. And you know what caught my ear this time, Joan, when you said the old podcasts? And I realized, for me, they're still active.
They
right?
aren't old, are they?
They're not.
Kind
They're
of,
previous.
to timeless
They're
things. Yes.
They're previous shows. And so that caught my ear this time, and I went, oh, right, because they're still active. Yeah. That's it. Anyone, go back and catch some of the previous episodes we've had and see what you notice. See if who you were then and what you heard then and what you hear now, and see if those aren't different things, because I guarantee they will be.
Well, yes, and it's amazing when you go back and listen to something that you hear differently. You hear different things about that.
Right. And we hear our own stuff differently. Right?
Yes.
I mean, that's the one thing that's coming up is you'll find yourself saying something and it'll hit you. What? Really?
Yes. And you know what? I asked you about your groups, and I don't remember hearing if you actually said about the groups, but I know I didn't ask myself about my groups. And so let me take a moment to let people know about my groups. So I hold meetups around the Puget Sound. I have regular monthly meetups in Tacoma and University Place, and I am going back to Lakewood this month or next month in May. This weekend on the 28th, I'm at the Tacoma Wheelock Library in North Tacoma on Saturday the 28th from 3 to 5 p.m. These are all in the meeting rooms. I'm going to be in the Lakewood small meeting room on May 5th from 3:15 to 5, and then in University Place on a Sunday the 20th, and that is from 2 to 4 in their, I believe I'm in their large meeting room that day. So you can find out those details on our website, consciousconversationswithjoanandjanet.com. And I don't have a webinar scheduled this next month, but I am going to be on the Transformation Show on the 28th of May. So stay tuned, because there's some amazing things that never before offered and not offered anywhere else there.
It's getting quiet, Joan.
I noticed that.
Did you? Yeah. I want to thank you all, listeners, because we can feel that's evened out a bit. And that's, as you go about your day and all the things going on, this is real. And that's the bottom line. This is real. You can feel the quiet that's present. And you may not have been looking for it, and you may not be expecting it, but just notice, there it is. And, there's so much to be appreciative of. It's easy in spring. I'm looking at beautiful things blooming around me outside and just wanting to be present for it. And how this spring is different perhaps than any other spring that I've had. And you just feel more part of it. It's just freeing up. So appreciate that about yourself. It's springtime within ourselves.
Well, it's funny you were saying that, because you're talking about our previous shows, and really what we talk about is timeless. So yeah. I'm imagining people listening to this in the dead of winter, or they're listening to it from Australia. And it doesn't matter what season you're experiencing. And even if we tie our topic to current events, their growth and change is happening all the time anyway, and there is a continuous increasing of consciousness. So you can relate to this regardless of what calendar, time, date, or year you're listening to this, because as consciousness, you exist outside of that anyhow. So it's all happening at once, as consciousness.
And so we're all in this big share state, right? And we always are. That's what consciousness, you understand, is that we're individuals, unique individuals sharing in a collective, and that you can piggyback. And so we might mention something that leads you to something that's your reference. And that's great. Use it. But just notice that there's information available, and what happens with that, and how to utilize potential, because what you're in the quiet is potential, and that means it's no thing yet, right? Energy is something. It's labeled, it's already something, but potential is free of that, and it holds for that. And so when you hear the quiet and the stillness and the non-doing, there's nothing to do here. There's just being more open or unfolding or accessing, whatever the word it is you want. Yeah, and just you shift to being. The being who moves through inspired action. And that's what's getting really clear for people. It's exciting, but you'll have to do something. And in the doing is not doing something physically. It's in the accepting or utilizing or experiencing that difference. So, there's no going back.
Yes, so sometimes the doing is being.
Yes, that's it. That's it exactly.
And I tell you, there is no going back, but we do have to go to a break. So stay tuned because we'll be talking more about consciousness and death when we come right back.
Is your soul calling you to do something more meaningful with your life? Do you feel crazy for wanting to quit your secure job? Perhaps you are waiting until you retire to do what you love. Maybe you are too daunted to follow your dream. If any of these match your life, then Joan Newcomb's Purpose and Passion Coaching Program is just for you. In just 12 weeks, you will discover who you essentially are and why you are here. Learn to live as your greater self and navigate with conscious mastery. Go to joan-newcomb.com. That's joan-newcomb.com for all of her coaching programs. Would you like a fresh approach to the challenges you are dealing with? Take a journey into your enlightenment with Janet Barrett. Janet is a subtle energies empath, accessing the field of potential with warmth, humor, and support. She will help you to hear what your inner voice is saying. She will share with you how to appreciate who you are now and offer you new ways to understand and transform your issues. Reach her at www.janetandbeyond.com. That's janetandbeyond.com. Again, janetandbeyond.com. Transformation is possible. You can enjoy new outcomes in your current experiences. They can happen in the blink of an eye.
You are listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. To reach our program, please send questions and comments to consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. That's consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. Now, back to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet.
Welcome back. You're listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. I'm your host, Joan, along here with Janet, and we are talking about consciousness and death.
Well, we got to get over it, right? Everything goes through transitions. Now, it's what you've got invested in that.
I want to stop you there because, one thing is I always hate it when you say that. And I hate it when you say you got to get over it. But the other thing is that you said a couple different times, and I understood what you were saying, but my emotional reaction to it was, that there's no going back. And then there's this little kid that just like, no. And I was remembering when I was 5 years old, my family moved to London, and we had the opportunity to take the SS United States, a boat there. So it took us 5 days to sail across the Atlantic Ocean, and we set off from New York and ended up in Southampton. So leaving on a ship of that size back then was really quite an event. And so as we were taking off, there were all these people down on the shore, waving goodbye, and all the people on top. And my oldest brother had thrown a streamer down, and my cousin Chucky had caught it. So he actually had a connection to Chucky. And he wanted to go tell Dad or my brother or something. So he gave the end of the streamer to his 5-year-old sister. Guess what she did?
Dropped it. You did.
I had no connection back then. I had so that's a different aspect of the little kid in you that can be in the present moment and moving into the next present moment. where you realize that that when there's no going back, it's a good thing. It's like you're on the river going on to the next, the river keeps flowing and you are in this flowing of life. And so as consciousness, it's an exhilarating experience. And then in terms of getting over, the thing about, telling people to get over it feels invalidating to the emotional state that they're in. And it isn't really useful. It doesn't sound useful and helpful but if you reframe it to you as consciousness can help your body coax your body through this experience or nurture yourself through this experience, then it makes it a lot easier to release it rather than just get over it kind of thing.
I appreciate you saying that, because that is validating that we're all at different places and we're all listening through different parts. And that's the emotion is the human part of it. And in respecting that we're all different places, and sometimes there's just tough love. There's just where it's always done in a context of appreciation. And sometimes how you have to change people's states, and you hear the child that's crying, and you hear that's where it's the automatic response and it's not about what really happened. And we do that all the time. So I mean absolutely no disrespect to where people are. And in saying that it's time that that the past is the past. That's why we're talking about this. That's what Eckhart Tolle talks about. Is about you're in the past, and in the breath space in between the next breath is the present. It's the now. And in the now, there's nothing to get over because you're not in the past thinking that this is it. And it's about changing that state of before and after. And appreciating, yes, there's that connection and how vital that is. And you're in your awareness now, you realize that it didn't mean anything to you. It meant something to your brother. And then you got impressed that it should mean something. And you can feel all of that steps. And those are real and we're honest. And we have it everywhere in us like that. And so be gentle with ourselves always as consciousness is present. It always is. But it's not attached. And that's the key. It's not attached to the outcomes.
No. Well, you know what? I just had this flash. Is the reason it's not attached to any outcomes is because all outcomes are existing for it.
Exactly.
All
so
possibilities.
pick whatever one you want.
Exactly. Just pick this one, pick that one. And there are no mistakes because there's an aspect of yourself that picked the opposite. And you can shift to a different experience as easy as changing lanes on the freeway.
Got it. All right. Well, we need to wrap this up sometime here.
Oh, sometime in the future, we need to wrap this up. And really quick, I want to remind folks that you're listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. And if you want to know more and connect with us beyond the show, our website is consciousconversationswithjoanandjanet.com. You can listen to our past podcasts. You can read all our blogs. Janet and I both write blogs. You can find out about our meetups in the Puget Sound and in Portland. You can connect to us about our sessions, Janet's sessions on Zoom, Skype, or phone, and me on Zoom, Skype, or phone. You can also connect to our Facebook, Twitter, YouTube accounts, and LinkedIn on the site. And Janet has her groups on by Zoom on Thursdays.
And then my regular groups on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Right. So and then I have one coming up this weekend in Tacoma and a couple more in May. So take a look on the website. We'll have all that stuff updated for you.
Yeah. And we'll get through this, everyone. We do get through it. It might not be what you expect it to be, but we'll get through it.
It's always in the process getting better. It is getting better. It may feel more intense, but it is.
Yeah. Well, because people come to their moments and they go, oh, that's what this is about. And then the clarity is present and it's like, oh, that's the payoff.
Yes. And we want to appreciate everyone for tuning in. And no matter when you're listening to this, you're helping to contribute to the morphic field. So we really, really appreciate you.
And thank you, everyone. It's been lovely to be with you.
You've been listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. And tune in next week, same time, same channels.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. And thanks so much for helping to co-create the show, no matter if you're listening live or on demand. You energetically contribute to our collective experience. Joan and Janet love to hear from you and invite you to email your comments and ideas for them to explore each week. Contact them at consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. Tune in next week for another great show, and until then, keep enjoying this wonderful adventure we call life.